Okay, so with that, I gave all the council people a packet. The packet is statistics that we heard a lot about during the public meeting. It is statistics for all the 24-hour gas stations from 2019 to present. It's every incident that has occurred during those hours at those specific stations. So I know that from talking to several of you on the council, it doesn't sound like this ordinance is coming out tonight, which makes sense. You're going to want to review the information that you received, and then we could talk about that obviously after your review. But I think what you're going to find specifically is some numbers that are way too high for these types of businesses. And I think that's why this ordinance is has been put together at this time to address some of the things that we heard during public comment or during the public meeting. I heard Mr. Stoya talk about how this is a slippery slope. You do it to one group, it's going to go to the next one. Like next week we're going to say, hey, we want to close Dairy Queen down at 3 o'clock. I heard the same thing back in the day when we acquired the River Park Apartments. And it was a very similar story in that the River Park Apartments had extremely high police calls and police incidents where most of our resources, and I remember the number being very high. I don't want to make up a number, but I recall it being somewhere around 80% of our police calls at certain times were going to those River Park Apartments. And I heard people say, if you're acquiring them or you're going to eminent domain them, you're going to take them, then you're just going to do it to the next guy a month from now and the next guy a year from now, and it's a slippery slope. Well, that's not what happened. We acquired the apartments. Obviously all the police calls and the issues there went away. Some people unfortunately did lose their jobs because there were employed people there. But you go to Oxbow Landing now and you have a beautiful new development, over $65 million worth of investment, something that Hammond could be very proud of, something Highland is very proud of that they were a part of. And we don't have police calls at those sites anywhere in the vicinity of what it was back when those apartments were operable. And I don't mean to be exaggerative, but when I hear that if you're doing it to one, it's just going to get worse and worse, you are always going to be the council that's going to make a decision on whether an ordinance makes sense or not. So just because a second ordinance gets put forward doesn't mean you're going to approve that one if you do approve this one. So I always hate those arguments about predictions in the future of why you shouldn't do something now. When we're talking about this ordinance, of course we care about people that lose their jobs. Of course we care about business owners that are trying to run a successful business and make money. But in the end, you're really talking about the greater good. Is this protecting our residents? Is this protecting other businesses? Is this protecting our police officers that are disproportionately responding to calls at these locations more than other businesses? And I think it might have been Councilwoman Venez that brought this up. It's exactly what happened at McTavern's. When we had several incidents, we have power in those situations because there's a liquor license board that we can go to and say, look at this, do something about it, and they can pull their liquor license and the business is killed. So because of that, we were able to have McTavern's close. Happened again on Kennedy Avenue at Coach's Corner. We were having a number of incidents on a regular basis where people were getting hurt. Gunshots were happening on a regular basis where bystanders could get hurt. Not just people at the business, but people in that neighborhood could get hurt. And we end up acquiring the property and shutting down the business. When you are looking at the calls in those reports, even if they are not gunshot calls, you keep in mind that every time a police officer, and it's always going to be more than one, is responding to one of those police calls at the gas station, that's that officer not watching our neighborhoods, not watching our homes, and not protecting other businesses. So I just want to, put my 2 cents in when it comes to this. I also want to bring up that there was a bar, and I'm not going to mention the name, that was having some issues, and we reached out to them, and they came and they met us right here in the mayor's conference room, and we sat down, and we said, here's what's going on. And they said, you're right. here's what I want to do to fix it, and can I work with you to fix it? And they did. They made changes. Our police officers were in the room when those conversations were happening. That business, as far as I know, to this day is not having those issues anymore. And they're in operation and successful, and everybody wins. So it's not just overreaching government coming in and saying, this is what's going to happen and that's all there is to it. It's, we need to work together to fix this problem. And so that's, I just want to make sure that we talk through some of the things that came up during the public comment. I think I hit on everything that I wanted to, so if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Mr. President?
Yes.
All right, Phil, just glancing through this information, no shots to you or anything, but just glancing, because right now we just got it, so thank you for getting it for us, because if it was voted on tonight, it would be very bad that we just got it right now.
Agreed. I wouldn't suggest you vote on it this evening.
Yes, so we know that we're tabling it for now. But just glancing through this, I'm just pulling away from some of this stat that it just proves right here that approximately 6 have more issues than the other, let's say about 12 or so more. So just with this data, just glancing, numbered like how many things are on the sheets versus and the dates from 2019 to now, it still does not give enough information that says we have a big problem at our gas stations. So just looking at it from this standpoint of just saying with these sheets that are stapled, there's more activity at these gas stations versus these. The other thing is, we said this in our committee meeting, that we know that it's people that are causing crimes. It's not our gas station owners. So made suggestions to those owners about joining our FUSIS program. I also asked that we get our police department until we can get around to our businesses in the city to actually get that information out to all of our businesses, because we want them to be good neighbors and participate in that program when we have things like criminal activity happening, that they have those access to the cameras. Now they have live feed to them. They do not get a recording, but they're able to see something when a call is dispatched. So we want those business owners and even residents to understand that program, and I think maybe we can get maybe a video or something that explains the program that we can put out maybe on our TikTok that we have, or maybe on our Go Hammond page, so that they have more information. Also made a suggestion that if they have too many signs up on their windows, they get them down. We talked about a security guard overnight, because I really feel that this ordinance, we're rushing it. That's why we had to pull it back, but we're rushing it, that we can probably put some other things in place, that if they don't maybe oblige by them, that then we can go to this extreme. But right now, this is still a little extreme, and you can pass that on, and I know Mayor's probably watching, that we can look into. But I'm not seeing enough, just with glancing while you were talking, enough that still supports why we're wanting this ordinance to exist for all gas stations, okay? And let me pull up my note right here to say to you, if anybody else wants to comment, I'll get back to it. But I really do feel that it's our businesses' right to be open. And they should have that free right to, if they need to close. And we just put different parameters in place, but we don't force them to do certain things, because I'm pretty sure you wouldn't want to be forced to do something.
So my response to that is that's why there's something in the ordinance that allows each individual gas station owner to petition to not have to be closed during certain hours. And I think if they have statistics and things in place that prove that they are more safe and more secure and don't have the issues that some of the other ones do, I think that's where the Board of Works can look at that and make a decision. So I think it protects them still, but at the same time, it protects us from some of the gas stations that are not as safe as the others.
Mr. President, So my question is, are we saying that it's the gas stations that are the problem, meaning the gas station owners, the employees that are causing the crime? Or is it that people, like with our state gun laws that have changed, that say anyone with the age of 18, if they don't have a felony, they can carry, they have the right to carry without a permit? Or is it that maybe, even in the instance of if we had a hospital, maybe that young man wouldn't have passed away and they didn't have to go so far. We have a lot of other things, and I think we really need to dive back into the root of our issues in our city than to go all the way across the board with this one.
Well, I think what I would say is we have a disproportionate amount of calls at gas stations between the hours of midnight and 5 a.m. And because of that, I think that is where it is the responsibility of the administration and the council to work together to try and address the situation. Am I saying are we blaming the employees and the business owners? I obviously can't say something like that because I don't know specific employees and I don't know specific business owners, being honest, but I could tell you by looking at some of the incidents on those lists, specific gas stations, things have been going on for a very long time, and they have not addressed it. They have not tried. We've sat back and haven't done anything, haven't put any ordinances forward or tried to change some rules to make it more safe. They certainly aren't doing anything. So in my estimation, at some point, you've got to say, look, too many people are getting killed, too many incidents are happening, too many police calls. And by the way, the incidents you're seeing are the calls that came in. I think I heard from one of the police officers at the last meeting that came forward that said when he pulls up to a certain gas station that all of a sudden a bunch of people scatter, which means, we're constantly having patrols go by these areas because we know there are problems, and that is taking resources away from all the other businesses and residents that also need to make sure we're safe and secure. So that would be my response to that.
Mr. President, isn't it their responsibility to also drive these areas as well? And I'm not shaming our police or anything like that, but if they're driving past and people are fleeing, that means because they've made their presence known that things stop. So to say we can go to other areas or things like that, it's like, wait a minute. If they're driving past, we can go back to the Juneteenth event that we had. There was no incidents that happened because we had police presence. When presence is there, it's just like being in a classroom. I'm a teacher. If I'm not in a classroom, then my students can run them up. But if I'm there because of my presence, then they're not doing the things that they would normally do if they don't have someone's eyes on them. So having that access to fuses, it gives us that thing because, again, they have the phone call that happens now, someone is triggered to look on that camera and see, okay, it was this car, and now they can give more details because it's not saying they're big brother or anything like that, but it's just giving them more access to be able to pull out these things and say, okay, we're the good neighbor. So that's why suggesting to the business owners, before we say, let's stop your hours from here, yes, if we're going to stop them, and then now we're sending them to another board to approve them, that does not make sense to me either, to send them to somewhere else when we're the ones saying, okay, we're closing you down from 12 to 5.
Well, using your analogy in the classroom, I've heard this many, many times that teachers have to spend an inordinate amount of time with students that cause problems. And if you didn't have those students, or if you were putting something in place that made sure those students didn't cause as many problems, then the teacher could then pay attention to all the other students that are doing great. And I think it's the same with gas stations, honestly. We have our police that are constantly having to drive by these stations that are having nonstop issues, and it does pull police presence away from everybody else that doesn't have the same amount of problems. So trying to use the analogy that you were going with. But it's okay. I can obviously tell we may not agree 100% on this. I think right now the ordinance is in committee, so you guys have an opportunity to look at it, pick at it, see if this is something that you decide that it makes the most sense. Maybe there's a change or two that the council wants to see happen in the ordinance. I mean, obviously, that's why we have you reviewing it.
All right, does anybody else have anything they'd like to?